Hockey Inside Out, presented to you by the Montreal Gazette.
Welcome to the Hockey Inside Out Show. I'm Montreal Gazette sports editor Stu Cowan, joined this week by regulars Chris Nilan and Jack Todd, and special guest Michael Farber from Sports Illustrated and TSN. Chris, it was another sad week for the Canadiens family with Claude Ruel passing away at age 76. For a generation of Canadiens fans who don't know who Claude Ruel was or the man, what would you say to them?
Well, he was the ultimate teacher, you know. He took me when I came in here and, you know, I had a lot of rough spots in my game, and he got the sandpaper out and smoothed them off. He really helped me with my game. He was the guy who was responsible for me getting where I got in the NHL. He worked with me day in and day out on pass and shoot and skating. Every fundamental skill you need in this game, he worked on me with, and he made it so enjoyable to do, you know. Always call me Yankee boy, come on, just jump on your leg, Yankee boy, shoot the puck, Yankee boy. He constantly drilled it into me, and you know, he was fun to work with. Like any coach can send you over and back and skate without a puck and, you know, do laps and stuff like that, but he always involved the puck, and he made it fun. And I got the opportunity to see him at Jean Beliveau's wake, and I gave him a big hug and told him I loved him and how much he meant to me and how much he was responsible for my career. And he said, Yankee boy, you did it, Yankee boy. He would never take any credit, you know, and he was the one man who really had the biggest impact on me in my career.
Michael, you remember watching Claude Ruel work out players, you were saying.
Well, when players were injured and then trying to get back in the lineup, they had to go to Camp Ruel. And this isn't the age when players were great physical specimens. And they hated being injured because they would have much rather been at practice than working with Claude Ruel. I also remember Claude for his uncertain grasp of the English language, if we could call it that. There was a story, perhaps apocryphal, that he was in a coffee shop in the States somewhere, and he ordered breakfast and asked for 2 eggs, side by each, and a pair of toast.
Well, the old one is 2-on-1, each man take a guy. And then the one he had with me, it was funny, we were talking once, he said, I used to play hockey in Fling Flong with Forbes Kennedy, and it was so funny. Just a sweetheart, a wonderful guy. I absolutely love and adore him.
The Journal de Montréal ran a picture after his passing of Claude Ruel holding a press conference, sitting in the hot tub in the locker room. Jack, you're not going to see that these days.
We need those days back, you know. I can see Michel Therrien in that suit he wore last night sitting in the hot tub.
His lucky suit.
You know what he missed, though, in the hot tub, the picture in the Gazette, was the Diet Coke and the Kit Kat on sitting on the table.
Now, Jack, who was your favorite Habs coach to deal with?
Mine actually was Claude Julien. I like Pat Burns, but Pat bit my head off a couple times. And the great thing about Julien was if you could get him alone away from the cameras, he was the most honest coach I ever dealt with there.
Michael, yours?
Pat Burns, because Pat had rules. Beat guys outside, columnists inside. So I got into his office, Red Fisher, of course, Réjean Tremblay, Bertrand Raymond. Remember, there was an AIDS doctor in Montreal, Réjean Thomas, who had a patient who died of AIDS. And in a press conference, he announced that she'd had relations with 40 NHL players. And this was a big deal at the time, and I went in to talk to Pat about it, and I'm in his office, maybe 10 minutes, and I got nothing. And I'm literally about to get out of my seat and say, thanks, Pat. He says, oh, yeah, and I told Gaetan Lefebvre, the trainer, to put condoms in the training room. And I don't want these guys using them as water balloons either. This is a serious subject. Pat knew I didn't have what I needed. He was going to make sure, before I left his office, I had a column.
After the game the other night, Jessica Resnick, who's been on the show here before, asked Michel Therrien if that was his lucky suit, that 1930s sort of gangsters thing. Is this a lucky team, Chris, the way the Habs just...
Every team needs to have some luck. Yeah. But this team certainly is a team, I believe, that just doesn't quit, and they keep pushing it, and they push the pace. Again, we see them fall behind first period. They don't have good first periods. I think that's getting better as of late, by the way. But they're always there at the finish, just like last night against Philadelphia. They stick with it. They don't panic. The good thing about it, I believe, is that come playoff time, they're so used to playing in these close games. It's so familiar to them that I think it'll be a good thing. And I don't think you'll see that problem of them not being ready come playoff time for first periods.
Michael, have they maybe taken on Carey Price's demeanor a bit? They don't panic?
Yeah, I think they have a very high panic threshold, and that's the one similarity I see with the 93 team. With Patrick Waugh, they won a lot of the overtime games, lost the first one, then won 10 straight in the playoffs. They seem to be very comfortable in what should be uncomfortable situations, plus they're getting great goaltending.
And Lars Eller the other night mentioned another reason, which is obvious that, I don't know, for some reason it hadn't occurred to me why they're so good in the third period. They skate really hard. They're very fast. Teams get tired. In the third period, they cash in.
Michel Therrien said after the game, he said, this is a group of guys who refuse to lose. That's sort of like your 86 Stanley Cup team.
Yeah, it was kind of, well, when we got in the playoffs, because of the stretch going into the playoffs, we were losing. We weren't playing well at all. John Perron couldn't figure that one out most of the week. But we figured it out pretty quick come playoff time. And refuse to lose or not. The game they played in Boston the other night, I'm telling you, the Canadians, you could see, talk about the Flying Frenchmen, they had speed that Boston just could not deal with the other night, and it was fun to watch.
Now, Dale Weiss, some people have been mocking him being on the first line. Your thoughts, Michael, Dale Weiss is a first liner?
If we had this discussion 10 days ago, I'd say at the trading deadline, March 2nd, Montreal absolutely needs to go out and get a scoring winger. And last year did in Thomas Vanek, who had a couple of moments, but he was never fully engaged in what was going on here. And we all knew he was going to Minnesota for the 15-16 season. It worked very well for Los Angeles because you got Gaborik to play with Kopitar and they won a Stanley Cup. I'm not sure. Sometimes things work so well, and Chris can speak to this better than me, that you don't want to mess with what you have, but this team does need some more scoring at some point. Where it comes from, I don't know.
We'll be right back after a short break, and we'll talk about what the Canadians should do before the trade deadline. Welcome back to the Hockey Inside Out Show. The NHL trade deadline coming up at March 2nd, Jack. Marc Bergevin, what does he do? Get a forward, get a defenseman, stand pat?
I think you have to look up front first. I mean, if you have a top 4D somewhere somebody's giving away, okay, but I don't like Antoine Vermette. I know he's at the top of the list. A lot of people have. I think he's going to be fairly pricey. And the problem to me with him is he's getting those first-line power play minutes right now, and he isn't. I saw a stat breakdown with him and Eller, and Eller actually has better numbers based on time on the ice, power play situations, things like that. If I could target somebody, I would go after Wayne Simmons. That is the player to me they need.
Montreal and 28 other teams.
Oh, I know. So, but to me, what they need is that big guy with a little bit of an edge who can score more than if the Flyers were offering Giroux and Simmons, I'd take Simmons for this team. And I think they're that close. A Wayne Simmons type player could just about put them over at this point.
Vermette's an interesting case because he's good on draws, around 57%, and clearly if you're not playing Malhotra, it's nice to have a guy in your lineup who's a consistent winner of faceoffs, but he has 5 even strength goals this year. He's playing Plek minutes, about 19 a game. He is, as Jack points out, getting all this power play time. I don't really see it, and it is going to cost a first rounder and maybe another prospect. I don't understand why there's this great interest, especially for a team that, for the looks of it, needs a winger more than the centerman right now.
Now, Chris, the Evander Kane saga goes on. If you're Marc Bergevin, do you take a risk on this kid?
Geez, I don't know. I mean, you look into it, but you're still going to have to give up quite a bit. And you want to mess with your core players you have here and all the good things going on, taking a chance on a guy that might come in here and when his diaper gets wet, he gets all pissed off. So,
or when he gets thrown in the shower.
Yeah. So, I don't. That's a tough one. I think I'd stay away from it.
I would too. That tendency, a lot of teams have, a lot of GMs, we're the organization that can turn this guy around. We're the place where he's going to find himself. I think Bergevin is smart enough to know better than that in this case.
Well, if you look at Kane, the only place he can go is to a non-contender because teams girding themselves for a playoff run want a roster player. and they're not going to get that from teams in the playoffs. So he has to go to a bottom feeder who are willing to give up some roster players to Winnipeg.
The Buffalo Sabres are reportedly the team that's going after him hard right now. Jaromir Jagr, Chris, is there something enough left in him? Would you bring him here and reunite him?
Again, I always question why the guy's still playing. Is he going after records? Is he trying to become, climb that list of all-time scorers? It can't be the money. Is he paying off debt from Las Vegas? I don't know. I question why he's playing. Does he want to win a Stanley Cup again? Is that it? And listen, I want people here that really want to win. I question his motives.
Mike, he didn't have a big impact in Boston when he played in the playoffs there.
Well, they got to the final with him, so let's give him that. But he played 22 playoff games that year. He had 0 goals. Let me repeat that, 0 goals. He had 10 assists. I think if you took Claude Julien to dinner again, Jack, and fed him a bunch of drinks, he would say that Jagr necessarily wasn't a big part of what they were doing and maybe didn't like having him around. And there's certain deference. I mean, Jagr needs certain things as a player, and I'm not sure Montreal can give him that. I mean, people in this city are not happy at Parenteau's speed. I mean, Jagr takes it down one other notch. And on the power play, where he might have some value because he's magic. I mean, his hands are terrific. And he's got this Jennifer Lopez derriere. And he can protect the puck, and he can do all of those things. But when he was playing in New York, when he was still a very effective player, Tom Rennie had to remind the players that puck doesn't have to go to Jagr every time. You can pass it to him, but it's not. It can be official without Jagr touching the puck. So the players tend to defer to one of the all-time greats in the game.
And two about him, I'll second that with the no goals. When you get into playoff hockey, it's so different than playing this regular season, as we know. He can cruise through some games and get his points during the regular season, but come playoff time, when it gets cranked up, things get a lot tougher out there, and maybe that's why he had no goals.
Well, he has 11 goals this season, 9 even strength. That's the same number of even strength goals as Dale Weiss has for the Canadiens, so that's something that Canadian fans can think about. David Desharnais, third star of the NHL last week, scores the winning goal. It's a perseverance story with this.
I take credit for this because it was right after
Claude Ruel and Chris Nilan,
exactly.
Jack Todd and David Desharnais.
I wrote that he should know you couldn't win with him as your first line center, and it was within a week after that he was a third line winger. He actually played really well in that role, and now he's back there, third star in the NHL last week, game-winning goal last night. I mean, the guy, I've got to give it to him. He's like a vampire. You can't kill him. You put a stake through his heart, and he still comes back.
You look at the 07 Ducks. Andy McDonald was the first-line center there. Now there was a very young Ryan Getzlaf as the number 2 center, but you can win a Stanley Cup in all kinds of ways with 10 rookies.
Yeah.
Like in 86, you can win with the Anaheim defensemen. Look at Carolina's defense in 06. Aaron Ward and old Glenn Wesley and Frank Cabriolet. There are all kinds of ways. So when anyone says, well, you can't win the Cup with, you can probably find a handful of examples where you can win a cup.
You can win it just by winning 11 games in overtime.
That's right. The Habs keep looking for that big centerman. Jacob Bellerose, 19 years old. The way Terrien sort of babied Galchenyuk, putting him at center, all of a sudden Jacob Bellerose playing center on the fourth line. Your thoughts about this kid?
Well, this is the type of player moving forward that the Canadians got to draft. Guys with this size that can actually carry the puck up the ice and do some things with it. I think he's a breath of fresh air, and he's one of those players that you're going to need come playoff time. He got that size. He'll go to the corners. He'll go to the net. Much like Seacatch. Seacatch isn't all that as big as him, but boy, he goes to the tough areas and he plays. I think they got a good future here, and they're in the right direction. Bergevin, you got to give him credit. He's sticking to his game plan, and he wants to build this team through the draft. And we have to be patient while they're on, first in the East?
Well, after the Philadelphia, Michel Terrien said about Delroy, says he did not disappoint me at all. He's a smart player for his age.
And he's big, and he's got a bit of attitude. I keep saying, I hope Don Cherry is watching, because this is a Swede with attitude and size and skills. When they first called him up, he wasn't tearing things up in Hamilton. I thought, well, maybe it's a little early. It doesn't look early at all. I thought last night against Philadelphia he played his best game yet. He looks very comfortable out there. Great move.
That's it for this week's show of Hockey Inside Out. We'll see you again next week.